in account, before we begin the account or before we start learning the SAP, you need to know some words in the account. So first one, let's say expenses. What is called expenses? What is called expense? So expense is an amount which is incurred to run your business day to day. That is known as an expense. So any amount which you are incurring to run the day-to-day operation, that is known as your expense. So expense can be divided into two parts. One is known as a operating expense, another known as a non-operating expense. Non-operating expense. What is called operating expense? What is called non-operating expense? Operating expense means that expense which is directly incurring for the manufacturing purpose. Okay, the expenses which are directly involved in the manufacturing process, that is known as operating expenses. To produce any product, whatever expenses you are incurring directly, that is known as operating expense. Let's say to produce you need material, so material expenses. You need labor who are involved in the manufacturing or in the factory. Those expenses, labor, salary, wages, okay, is known as a operating expense. Okay. So operating expenses is directly involved into the production process. Non-operating expenses means supporting expenses. Okay, supporting expenses. These expenses are not directly involved into the production. Okay, let's say admin expenses. Admin people are not going and working directly into the plant. They are not working at plant where production is happening, but they are helping. They are taking care whole process. They are doing the admin work. So any admin related expenses is known as a non-operating expenses. So operating expenses are those expenses which are directly involved into the production process. Okay, let's say you have two buildings. One building where your plant is set up. Another building, you have separate one building where is your head office is set up. So depreciation charge on the plant building, that is your operating expenses. But depreciation charge on the head office building, that is your non-operating expenses, because head office building is not directly involved into the production, but the office or the building which is used where plant is set up, that building depreciation is known as a operating expense. Is it clear what is operating and non-operating? Samira, is it clear? Pallav,
Yes,
is it
Harry,
clear?
it's clear. Yes, it is.
Pallav, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So whichever expense directly involved into the production, those expenses are known as operating expense. Whichever expenses are not directly involved, that is known as a non-operating expense. Okay. So you have to know, because during our conversation with the client, this word is highly being used. So you have to know what they are exactly talking about before you go and configure in SAP. Okay. Similarly, next point you have to know revenue. Revenue means this is the money or proceeds received from your day-to-day business. Okay. This is the money you are getting from your business. So the money which is received from your day-to-day business is known as a revenue. So revenue is also bifurcated into two parts, something called operating revenue and non-operating revenue. Non-operating revenue. Non-operating revenue. What is called operating revenue? Operating revenue is that revenue which you are getting from your main source of business. What does it mean? It means that, let's say you are having a laptop business. So whatever revenue you are getting by selling the laptop, that is known as your operating revenue, because selling the laptop is your main business. So the getting the money from main source of business is known as a operating revenue. Okay. What is called non-operating revenue? Let's say when customer pays you money late, you charge him penalty. So that is known as a non-operating revenue. See, charging the penalty to your customer, a late fee, is not your business, main business. But you have terms and condition that when customer doesn't pay you more than 90 days, you may charge him some penalty, charge him some interest. So that income is known as a non-operating income. Let's say you have excess money uh, in your business, you deposited that money into bank and you got some interest. That is known as a non-operating revenue. So operating revenue means getting the money or getting the income from your main source of business. That is known as your operating revenue. Non-operating revenue means getting the money from not regular business. Let's say when you purchase this laptop, you know that this laptop comes along with box also, right? Correct, na, Pallab? Box also comes, right?
Yes, sir.
This, so let's say there was some
Yes, sir.
scrap boxed, there was some scrap box, and you sold you and you got some 1,000, 2,000 bug. Okay, money you got. That is known as your non-operating revenue. You have you have very scrap chairs, you sold them, you got some money. So that is your non-operating revenue. So operating revenue is getting the money from main source of business. Non-operating is earning the money from your not main source of business, is known as a non-operating revenue. Is it clear, Samira and Pallav
Yes, sir.
and all?
It's clear. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, sir. Clear.
so you have to know what is your operating revenue, what is called non-operating revenue. Okay, because during the conversation with the client, they will bring this kind of words, so you have to be able to correlate. Now the difference between operating revenue and operating expenses is known as a operating profit. Okay, so if you deduct the operating revenue and operating expenses, that is known as a operating profit. So what will happen? Operating profit equal to your operating revenue minus operating expenses. Okay, so operating revenue minus operating expenses is your operating profit. Non-operating non-operating profit is equal to your non-operating revenue minus your non-operating expenses. So that will become your non-operating profit. Is it clear? Clear?
Yes,
Both of you?
sir. It's clear.
Okay. So operating profit is equal to operating revenue minus operating expenses. Non-operating profit is equal to non-operating revenue minus non-operating expenses. Okay. Sometime you have to also know what is called net profit. Net profit means your revenue minus expense is equal to your net profit. Revenue minus your expenses. So, many a time you have to calculate net profit, which is revenue minus expense. But sometime business will also ask you the bifurcation of the profit. They will tell that I need operating profit and I need non-operating profit. That time you have to have the operating revenue minus operating expenses is your operating profit. Non-operating profit means non-operating revenue minus non-operating expenses. Okay. It is not always profit. It may be loss also. Okay. So if your operating profit is less than your operating expenses, then you are having the operating loss. Okay. So let me write here operating loss. If your operating profit is only 1000 rupees, but your operating expenses is 1500, then you are in loss. Okay, this is known as operating loss. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, Harry. It's clear. Yes.
Operating revenue, my operating expenses. If your operating profit is operating revenue is 1500 and operating expenses is 1000, then you are in operating profit. Okay, similarly here non-operating revenue, non-operating expenses. So non-operating profit. Non-operating profit if your non-profit revenue is more than your non-operating expenses, then you are getting non-operating profit. Okay. Then non-operating loss. Vice versa. If your non-operating revenue is less than your operating non-operating expenses, then you are in loss. So this is the thing. Similarly, net profit means revenue loss. And expenses. You'll get profit if your total revenue is more than your total expenses, then you'll get profit. If your total revenue is less than your total expenses, then you'll get loss. Is it clear, both of you? Both of you, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Harry.
Okay, good, 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 very good. Okay. So these are the terminologies will be used during your discussion with the business. You have to understand what business is really talking about. Okay. Then next important concept you have to know is liabilities. Liabilities. Liabilities is any due amount to be paid to anyone, that is known as a liabilities. If your business is on, if your business has any due amount to pay anyone, then it is known as a liabilities for the business. Okay. Let's say business has not paid the salary, then it is their liabilities. They have to pay salary to the employees. Let's say they have taken loan from bank, they have not paid, they have to pay to the bank. It is the liabilities. Let's say they have purchased some raw material from the supplier, they have not paid, they have to pay. It is their liabilities. So liabilities is anything which is due by the business to pay anyone. It can be their employees, it can be their banks, it can be their suppliers, it can be the government as well. Let's say they have collected some taxes but they have not paid to the government. That is also business liabilities. So any due, any pending amount by the business to pay anyone, that is known as a liabilities. Okay, so liabilities are bifurcated into two. One is known as a short term liabilities, short term liabilities, short term liabilities, and long term liabilities. Okay, short term liabilities means which has to be paid within the year. Okay, if any liabilities which should be paid within the year, that is known as a short term liabilities. Any liabilities which has to be paid within the year is known as a short term liabilities. Okay, let's say what will be your liabilities. So you have to pay my fees, that is within the year you have to pay me, that is your short term liabilities. If you have taken any house loan, you have taken any education loan, then you have to pay more than 1 year, that is your long term liabilities. So same applies with the business also. If any liabilities business has to pay, if any due amount business has to pay within the year, that is known as your short term liabilities. If anything they have to pay in more than 1 year, okay, that is known as their long term liabilities. Is it clear, short term liabilities and long term liabilities?
Yes, Harry. Yes, it is.
Okay, so for business short term liabilities will be paying to the supplier. If they purchase anything from supplier, then they have to pay to the supplier. So let's say supplier, they have to pay to the supplier. So this is their short term liabilities. Any due amount, let's say salary due, okay, they have not paid, any outstanding, either it is salary outstanding, a telephone bill they have not paid, electricity bill company has not paid. So anything, any outstanding within the year, if they have taken any short term loan they have taken, okay, short term working capital loan they have taken, so all these are their short term liabilities which has to be paid within the year. Long term liabilities, let's say they have taken bank loan for more than 1 year. Okay. Any debentures, okay, any other long term liabilities which they have taken for more than 1 year. They have to pay in more than 1 year. That is their long term liabilities. So business may ask you to show separately like short term liabilities and long term liabilities. That time you can ask them, tell me which are the item you want to show as a short term liability, which are the item you want to show as a long term item. Business will tell you, they will guide you, okay, during your SAP implementation time. Okay, then there is something called equity. You have to know equity is also known as a shareholders equity. This is also known as share capital. What is called equity? Equity means it is a owner money. Whoever is owners, whatever money he or she has invested in the business, that money is known as a shareholders equity or share capital. If Samira is starting a business, So whatever money she invest in the business, that is the share capital, or that is her equity, or that is the shareholders equity. So any money, not just money. Let's say she given her laptop also in the business. She given her building also in the business. She given her cash. She has given her bank balance. So anything she invest in the business, that is her share capital. Okay, that is her equity. Okay, so one or more person can also invest in the business. That is known as a shareholders equity. Okay, so any amount invested by the shareholders or owners or businessman in the business is known as a equity or share capital. I hope it is clear. Is it clear?
Yes,
Clear?
Hari. Yes, it is.
Okay, fine.
Yes,
Next,
sir.
you have to know is asset. What is called, what are the businesses asset? Take an example, Apple. So what are the Apple asset? So asset is any resource. Apple asset is any resource owned by the business for regenerating the business. See, anything if business is purchasing not for the resale purpose, but to use that resource and regenerate the cash flow. So all those resources are known as a assets. Okay, anything businesses purchase for usage purpose, not for resale purpose, for usage purpose, by using the resource, if they are generating the cash flow for long time, that is known as their assets. Okay, so let's say you purchase the machine. If you're purchasing that machine for usage purpose, by using, you want to generate the cash flow, you generate the business, that is known as a assets. Okay, so asset is also categorized into two, that is known as short term asset and long term asset. Long term asset, short term asset is also known as a current asset. Current assets, this is known as a fixed asset. Similarly, here also we say current liabilities. Okay, for short term liabilities we also say current liabilities. So short term asset or current asset or long term asset. So any asset which has lifespan of less than 1 year, that is known as a current asset. Okay, let's say your data, all your customers. So it is assumed that all my customers will be paying me money in 1 year. Okay, so all those customers. Okay, anything you have paid in advance, all the prepaid expenses. Okay? Any cash balance you have. If you have invested in any, if business has invested in any marketable securities, like say government, treasury, bank treasury, anywhere they have invested. So all these their current asset. It is assumed that the life is below 1 year. Okay. Fixed asset is also known as long-term asset. Let's say machine, building, furniture, all this, vehicles, licenses, trademark, all this known as your fixed asset. Is it clear? What is called current asset and what is called fixed asset?
Yes, sorry.
Any
Check.
any other investment you have done? Long term investment. Okay. All this your known as a fixed asset. So you have to know these terminologies. What is the asset in that? What is called short term asset? Okay. What is called fixed asset? Sometimes they are writing like this also, non. This is they are writing like non-current asset. Okay, that also I have seen they are writing in some of the business non-current asset. If this is non-current asset, then it means they are telling it is long-term asset. So opposite way also, some of the businesses are writing in their financial statements. So these are the terminologies you must know. Is it clear?
Yes,
Is it clear?
sorry. It is.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Then today I wanted to train this one. Tomorrow I'll be training you the golden rules of account. That is very, very important. Okay. Before we get into the SAP. Thank you so much. Huh? Thanks a
Okay.
lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Thank